Hi, I'm Tim, he's Brian, and welcome to Watchbox. New for Thursday mornings, we are the team with the theme, and today's theme is sub $10,000 watches. You will find 1,119 of them currently live on thewatchbox.com.
Is that right?
Absolutely.
That's a lot.
Over 1,000 watches in that price point. We've got 7 of them on the table today. Brian, good to see you.
Little elbow bump right there. So guys, thank you for tuning in. We're going to be trying to get lots of great content over to you while everybody's home. As Tim mentioned, we've got sub $10,000 price point watches here on the table. A truly eclectic mix, as you all will see very shortly. The great thing about the sub $10,000 price point is that it encompasses a lot of watches and a lot of brands. And it's not something that we've highlighted on a show that me and you have done too often.
No, we never really coordinated a theme. Brian would show up with his watches, I'd have mine, and very little bound them together. Today, you've canceled the European vacation, or Europeans, vice versa. You can instead put that money into a watch that will outlast the coronavirus. So we're going to start with a couple of Brian's favorites.
Yeah,
Brian,
do you want to do a quick wrist check? I decided to stick with the theme and do a sub 10. This is a watch that I've brought on the show before. It is a re-edition of the Tag Heuer Carrera from 1964, stainless steel case, salmon dial, brown croc strap. I've really been meaning to change the strap to make it a little bit more casual. I don't know, for me personally, that the croc fits in with the overall look and aesthetic. But I'm a big fan of salmon dial pieces. The look and feel of this, especially the size, just hit all of the buttons for me. And I think that these watches in particular offer a retro vibe, but with modern functionality. So you don't really have to worry about the watches not necessarily keeping time. They run to factory spec. And just once I saw the watch, I knew that I had to make it mine.
A lot to love about this watch. Moonwatch powered, of course. It was a 1996 release, one of the first modern Tag Heuer pieces to be branded exclusively Heuer. And you'll see that on the dial, you'll see that on the case back, and you will see that on the buckle itself. They realized early on that the Heuer brand had a lot of nostalgic name equity that Tag Heuer didn't necessarily. 1996 was also the year that Tag Heuer went public as a company prior to its LVMH years, and so this watch was in many regards the piece that unified the past and the present and the future of the brand. A lovely piece, and again, it's powered by the same Lamagna base that you will find in the Omega Moonwatch. Good piece.
Thank you.
And you guys know me, I am rather predictable as I have my Zinn Easy M11, a 500-piece limited edition from 2017 dedicated to the 1990s Easy M1, created for the German Customs Enforcement Unit. And of course, this piece, 43mm integument steel with a central chronograph register for both minutes and seconds. Let's roll with the first
so
of
I'm going to start with a watch
Yes.
that, for me, when we discussed the pricing category, I had just priced the watch out on the website, and I knew that this was one that I wanted to do. So let's start with the Patek 3520D.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Okay, there we go.
So yellow gold Calatrava, iconic in appearance, quite conservative, hobnail bezel, white Roman dial. I mean, this is as quintessential Patek Philippe as it gets. In particular, this watch has an automatic movement, which, for those that are watching that know about the brand, would generally start at a much higher price point and be a larger watch. So for an ultra-thin automatic, the watch is just spectacular. It comes in at 32mm, so it may be a little bit small for most people. For me, it happens to fit quite nicely. I actually think the presence of the watch, because of the way that the lugs are, has a slightly larger presence on the wrist. For me, when I look at it, when I put it on my own wrist or I see it on others, it feels more like a 35mm watch, but this watch comes in at sub 10,000. It's priced on the website at $9,450. It comes with papers. It's from 1977, I believe. I'm going to confirm that right now. But just overall, I think exceptional value and a way to get into the brand at just a really good price point. 1977, March 18th, 1977.
Yeah, a price point that you would more commonly associate with the rival from across the town, Rolex. Mm-hmm. Very different clienteles, and yet somehow they converge with the price of this piece. I'll also mention that this 3520 was the first of the hobnail bezel Calatravas. Back before that term Calatrava had been dispensed to describe this type of traditional Patek Philippe dress watch. Remember, the original Calatrava, by tradition, was the original 96 that ran from the 1930s, 1932 to the early 1970s. So this model, launched in the early 1970s, was in many regards not just the first of the hobnail bezel Calatrava-style watches, but the legitimate successor to the original 96. This is an important continuity, a lovely watch that's beautifully made inside and out, and again, uncommon in this price point. What I also love about it is that it wears on any wrist, so it's not just a great traditionally sized men's dress option and an important reference for Patek, but it's also a lovely unisex piece that looks good on any wrist size and any skin tone.
Yeah, no. So, as I said, exceptional value for what it is that you're getting, especially that it's an automatic Patek Philippe, and I think an often unnoticed reference that most consumers don't really even know that it exists. So, moving right along, should we do one from your batch?
Yeah, let's do mine. I think right here, I picked 3 watches that I really like personally. So if I were to put together a 3-watch collection per my own tastes, it would look a lot like this. And we're going to start with a timepiece, the likes of which I have praised for years, and that is the 5015 reference Blancpain 50 Fathoms, launched at Baselworld 2007. It was an homage to the original 1953 50 Fathoms, which you'll recall beat the Rolex Submariner to market by a few months, thus becoming the first modern format dive watch. The timepiece has everything you could want. Though 45 millimeters and thus a product of its times, the late 2000s, it wears easy on a small wrist because it's only about 50 millimeters lug to lug. So when you actually put it on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, and I have a small wrist, you can see it doesn't overlap the edge. The lugs are short cropped, tightly downturned. The watch wears almost like a lugless case. You'll also appreciate the richness of it. The white gold indices, hands, and numerals on the dial, the cambered sapphire crystal that sits not just atop the dial, but atop the bezel itself, allowing the entire bezel to be loomed. Peter Spigmarin did a great teardown of this watch, and his commentary on the bezel, the case, the crown, and the movement was that it was among the most robust, best built, and most beautifully constructed of all dive watches he's encountered. And coming from that kind of watchmaking experience, I consider him to be an authority in the matter. Now, when you look at the watch, there's a lot to love because the details have been, as we say, sweated. Turning along to the side profile, you can see that the straps are held on by bars that are fixed in place by small hex keys, meaning there are no spring bars here. Blancpain is not risking anything. You can also see how short the lugs are from that angle. They don't really project far beyond the case, so the watch wears very true to size, maybe even smaller than size. We'll hold it up against my condenser mic here so you can hear the bezel action. That's part of the dive watch experience, guys. It's a make or break, and it makes this watch.
It was also one of the first, sorry to interrupt.
Of course.
It was also one of the first watches that the entire line was produced on these nylon sail type straps. And
yes.
I think that, you were pretty much either rubber strap or bracelet before these really started taking off. And to me, that material, then you started seeing it in other brands. You started seeing it in IWC, and other brands that didn't want quite all the way sport, but it gave a sporty watch a more dressy, or call it upscale casual appearance.
Yes, that's a fact. And because it is a sailcloth material, it's almost indestructible. And because that can be a coarse material against the skin, these are all coated with vulcanized rubber on the bottom, which really makes the ergonomic experience. Now, inside the case, you can see it says anti-magnetic like a Milgauss. More to be said about that model in a moment. It has a soft iron inner cage to protect the caliber, which is the 1315. 3 barrels, exclusive to Blancpain, made by Frédéric Piguet, its movement manufacturer. It has 120-hour power reserve. It's free-sprung, adjusted in 5 positions, and it features a wonderful finish about it that's as good as anything you'll find at the other oversized sports watch manufacturer in Le Brassus, Audemars Piguet. So I consider this to be a real rival in form, function, and finish to the Royal Oak Offshore Diver, with the exception that this one has a longer tradition behind it and a more capable movement within.
So I guess keeping in line with sports watches, we have another piece here on the table. This is the Hublot Super Bee, no longer in production, 42 millimeter screw down pushers. When Hublot, I would say prior to the Big Bang and in conjunction with it, this is what most consumers, when they closed their eyes, thought of when they thought Hublot. Obviously a little bit more classic and conservative than what the brand is producing now, but overall to me, a great watch. You have a sapphire crystal case back, as I mentioned, plastic screw down pushers, just a rich sports watch. To me, one of the most comfortable rubber straps on the market. And one of the maybe unknown features is the smell of the rubber strap. So in order to get rid of that rubbery smell, Hublot, I guess whoever manufactured the straps, put in a smell of vanilla.
That's correct.
So that the straps themselves, when you would smell it, would smell like vanilla instead of rubber. So this was probably the first sports watch on rubber. Not this version, but the classic Hublot. So overall, just a great watch, a great fit on the wrist. It comes in at sub $5,000, so it's a great price point. And I really think that these are a very good option. That if you're looking at that price point and you're looking at a Tudor and Omega, that this is a great option to include in that mix.
And it's important to note that this watch has a claim to fame as the first of the Jean-Claude Biver Hublot debuts. This one came out 1 year before the Big Bang at Baselworld 2004. Biver, of course, had revived the Blancpain manufacturer back in the 1980s. He sold it to Swatch in 1992, and then he became a chief executive at Omega during the 1990s, and he was largely responsible for the product development and the product placement and celebrity ambassador promotions that rebuilt Omega during the 90s. Now, he retired from the watch industry to work his farm and make his cheese, and he came out of retirement when Carlo Crocco, the founder of Hublot, offered him a stake, so equity, but also the CEO position at Hublot. And so Biver accepted, he took his stake, and he immediately began to develop the brand in the direction that he felt was a suited direction for the times. And thus you first saw the Super Bee, which is interesting because this 42mm steel watch bridges the gap between the original 1980 MDM Genève Hublot dress watch and the later Big Bang. As you can really see, it's a bridge between those two eras, and in many regards it was forward-looking as it anticipated the more stripped-down, refined, compact cases and subdued manner of the now hugely popular classic Fusion line. So in many ways this was both the past and the future of Hublot. No one could have anticipated how influential this model would be, because today the Classic Fusion, I believe, runs even with the Big Bang for sales. It has an ETA base, 100 meters water resistant, and as Brian mentioned, there are polymer caps on the crown as well as shoulders for the chronograph pushers. Let's throw it on the wrist real quick. You were saying $5,000 or under $5,000 for this?
Under $5,000.
As you can see, this is a very compact watch by Hublot standards. It's even fairly thin for a modular complication. It wears nice, discreet, comfortable, and again, because of the size, 42 with a rubber strap, it wears on any wrist. And I think that's a fun piece because a lot of folks don't give Hublot credit for also doing the subdued watch as well. The history of the company is longer than you think. The further back you go, the more traditional some of the sizes and styles. And I'll mention the 50 Fathoms that I showed before, since we're talking price, $9,950, so that just squeaked into the show today.
And I highlighting, when you say that they aren't appreciated for some of the watches that they make, I think that most collectors at large had this image of Hublot in their head that they're all these crazy limited editions, and it's not necessarily the case. The classic Fusion line come in at a very good price point, nicely built watches. They're ultra comfortable, and if you're looking to spend sub $10,000, they really do make a really good watch.
Yeah, that's a fact. And I think, although not on the table today, some of the caliber 1300 Hublot Classic Fusion models, you're getting a super thin, durable, versatile style, often in titanium. One of the best used dress watches you can buy is a Classic Fusion with the caliber 1300, and I think the Super Bee does a great job of splitting the difference between a Classic Fusion and a Big Bang. By the way, the 3520, what was the price of that one again?
That is...
We were talking just under $10,000.
$94.50.
$94.50 for a Patek Philippe Calatrava 3520. A special piece, and again, fitting with our Dream Team theme of $10,000 and below. Okay, so let's talk about another one of yours, because I think you got a different take on the dive watch than I brought with the 50 Fathoms. Tell me about this.
I brought a really eclectic mix just because I wanted to, A, mix it up, and B, look at watches that I could see myself wearing. So I may, on the Watch Insider, have brought one Linde Werdelin on in the past, but to me, I was looking at sports watches that fall into this sub $10,000 price point, but are also really unique, interesting, innovative in terms of design. And when I saw this Linde Werdelin, to me, it just struck as a watch I had to bring on the show. I'm a big fan of watches that have like a strong sense of luminescence, which this watch does, as you can see from the bright yellow on the dial. It's got a black DLC coated case, rubber strap. What's so interesting about the watch too is that while it may appear large and is overall considered a large watch, because of the shape of the case, it can fit both a large wrist or a small wrist extraordinarily well.
And that's a fact. A couple of things that basically speak to the versatility of this watch. First, it's exceptionally thin because of the use of an ETA 2892 base rather than a 2824 or a 7750 without the chronograph components. This watch sits low on the wrist, the way a Rolex sits low. Though technically it's generally described as a 44 to 46 millimeter watch. I don't know that there's a good way to measure it, because if you measure it across the case with the winglets, yes, 46, but if you measure it diagonally, it's a 44. What I can tell you is that it is a lugless watch. If you look at the profile of this watch, which is constructed in the modular fashion of another famous Danish design, Legos, goes together with countersinks for the strap ends. So the straps actually penetrate into the flank of the case, and the watch has no lug profile, which is why it wears like a 40 millimeter in spite of its nominally oversized proportions. Now, a few things I should mention. This is a timepiece conceived by Jørgen Werdelin and Morten Linde. And Morten Linde is a designer in the Danish tradition who wanted something that was modular, easily customized, highly functional, and capable of taking on additional dimensions. So you can see there are little locking wings on the flank that are the mounting point for their dive and land sports computers. The Reef is a dive computer with every function that you would ever want in a high-tech modern dive instrument, and then the Rock, principally designed for skiing, has everything from timers to backlights to an avalanche warning alarm, and both of those can modularly fit to this case over the dial. Now, it is a dive watch in its own form. This is a third generation Biformeter, and you can see it has a rotating bezel. We're going to do the bezel sound. Let's hear the detent.
Okay.
That's actually, I think, better than the Blancpain.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And so this is a 300-meter diver, super luminescent, and as you can see, highly customizable, as there are bolts atop the lug profiles, or I'll call them the case hoods, that allow you to easily remove this strap. You can fit alligator, you can fit calfskin, rubber, different colors, you can fit different buckles, many different options available on Linde Werdelin's website, and they only build a few hundred watches a year. I thought it was thousands, but a few years ago, Jørgen Werdelin took the leap of faith and appeared on my show back in the Watch You Want days, and he explained to me that they only make a few hundred pieces a year, and with this being an 88-piece limited edition, it's an even smaller subset of an already exclusive independent brand. A real cool watch, and rock solid with ETA power inside.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, like, at a few hundred watches per year, it's truly an independent brand, and it's priced at sub $5,000 on the website, and I just... I take a look at this watch and I see what else is in the market if you wanted to buy a new watch at sub 5,000. And to be honest, this just blows so much of it away. It has the appearance on the wrist and the aesthetic of a much more expensive watch. And, I know that we go back and forth on RM and whatnot, but, overall, like, I think when I look at this watch on the wrist, to me, it's got that same level of presence. And I think that at sub 5,000, I just and it being a sports watch and functional and overall not too crazy and having a good aesthetic, I almost look at it like it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, that's a fact. And I'll be honest with you, the whole watch probably costs less than a clasp from RM.
Yes, that is true. Less than a service.
That's much less than a service.
It's less than a basic service of a basic RM, and that's what's insane.
Are there any watches that maybe aren't on the table today that meet our sub $10,000 or 10,000 or below theme? Anything you want to call attention to? Because we do have so many of them on the website right now. It's a great impulse purchase if you're housebound during these coronavirus quarantine days. I think for $10,000, almost every Omega is on the table.
Correct. And there was one watch where it's not sub 10, but it's pretty darn close, is the AP Royal Oak City of Sales.
Yeah.
To me, that was the first Royal Oak that I fell in love with. Rubber strap, had that pop of red on the dial. It was sporty but classic at the same time, 39 millimeters in size. To me, it was just wow, and one of those first collaborative watches, and it was somewhat ahead of its time. And to this day, I still look at this watch and I say wow. And I just think that the relative value of that watch now being, let's call it sub 15,000, you can probably pick them up for 13.5 or so. I just think is an overall really cool watch and better than a lot of the watches than what the brand is making now.
Yeah, certainly, no question. I would say just in terms of, the brand on everyone's lips, always Rolex. But this is a good time to pick up Rolex models because the Rolex of our time, it might not be the GMT, the Daytona, or a sub. It might be an Oyster Perpetual 39. It might be an Explorer 39. It might be a Milgauss, and certainly we've got a great example on the table. This would be the Rolex I'd buy myself, and it will be my first Rolex someday. But a Milgauss, 40 millimeters in stainless steel, as ever, no date, soft iron inner paramagnetic cage, but this is the zany Z blue, and I'm convinced that's what the Z stands for, zany. You've got 4 different colors. You've got silver, you've got green about the crystal, you've got orange details on the dial, and that electrifying ionized blue. This is a timepiece that came out in 2014, and it's always been the Rolex for the guy who's not a Rolex guy, and that sort of describes me. It's still 100 meters water resistant, and because it does feature both the soft iron inner cage and the Rolex niobium zirconium hairspring, I believe this watch is a lot more anti-magnetic than advertised, and I've been saying for a long time that I'm going to use an MRI to test this. That is still in the works. At 40 millimeters, it's an easy one to wear, and at about 13 millimeters thick, you can see it's nice and flush and flat with a different profile on the wrist than the rotating bezel sports watches. I'll also mention that because it's one of the few Rolex watches whose lug-to-lug dimension is almost the same as its link-to-link distance across the wrist, I'm going to show you that when you look at it from the side, it's basically 50 millimeters lug-to-lug and 50 millimeters end-link to end-link, almost exactly the same, and one of the few Rolex watches for which I can say that. A super piece, and one that I think represents Rolex's alter ego, the zany Rolex, the sense of humor Rolex that gave us watches like the James Cameron Deep Sea D Blue, this Z Blue, the display caseback Rolex Princes. I think there is a streak inside of Rolex that is a little bit iconoclastic, and this watch is a product of that mentality. I love that thing.
It's an awesome piece.
$7,500 for that one.
It actually is the perfect Rolex for you.
It really is.
Super zany, a little bit different. A watch that collectors, I think, will look back once it's gone and say, like, I can't believe that Rolex made a green crystal blue dial watch with an orange hand.
Exactly. It's like when we look back to the 2000s and we realize Dodge made a 6.1 liter Hemi station wagon.
I'm going to pretend that I know what you're talking about. But what time are we guys at, camera crew?
We're good. We're good.
We're good? Okay. So we've got 2 watches left on the table. Why don't we start here with the Glashutte? This is a watch that I was a fan of when I first saw it launched at Basel World. Here we have the Glashutte with the burnt orange dial. Is it called Degrade? Is that how you pronounce it?
Degrade.
Degrade. You got the sound. So it's almost a burnt orange in color, changing color from the edge of the dial all the way to the center. You've got this riveting going on in the dial. I'm sure Tim will give a better explanation of how that's accomplished. But to me, it's from the 60s collection. Super thin, beautiful watch, and again, for me, just different. It's by far and away not that typical German aesthetic that you so often see from Glashutte and Linde. And with a retail price of $64.50, this watch, again, pre-owned, is coming at well under that $10,000 price point. And if you're looking for something different, an in-house movement, a really unique color and aesthetic, and a watch that I'm sure is made in low quantities, this to me is the right watch for you. And again, I think it's very hard for brands to come out with every single year really unique and new and interesting things. When they first launched this watch in green, everybody knew that Glashutte had a winner on their hands, and they said that they were going to produce different colors over time. This was the second iteration. I'm sure at some point they're going to come out with another color. If I know them, probably a blue or a yellow. But that being said, to me, awesome watch, a lot that you can do with the straps, but the small scale brown crocodile, I think, was the perfect strap choice for this watch.
I'm with you on that. I love this watch. This was the second of the Degrade dials, and it was the orange to, I guess you could call it an orange to black fade. The first was the green in 2018. This was the 2019 dial. And the interesting thing about this series is that they are basically dedicating one model year to each dial style. So with this dial, you have 2019. There were 2 versions, the one you see here, and then there was the Panadate. This one is 39 millimeters in stainless steel. The dial, it takes at least 6 steps to produce, starting with a multi-ton press that creates the cambered dome-like profile, as well as the texture texture that seems to scatter from the center. And then there are several levels of galvanizing and lacquering that produce the color and the gradient that you see. Finally, because this is the vintage 60s collection, you have those 60s inspired baton hands and the quarter Arabic numerals in a lovely swinging 60s style. And of course, the timepiece features an unusual type of index, and you can see it best from this angle, but the indices are actually etched into the dial, so they are actually hollows with mirror polished troughs. It's a very different look, and of course you are getting a GUB 39 base automatic 40-hour power reserve with some interesting details, like that solar spiral finished reduction wheel for the winding system and a black polished swan's neck atop the balance. Real good look on the wrist, nice and flat. You saw it before. It wears flush, it wears comfortable. It's a pure three-hand watch with no date. So a perfect dress option, but at the same time not a stolid or sober dress option. This is the Germans proving, just like Rolex, on occasion, they do know how to have fun. Love that piece.
Yeah, no, awesome watch. So I think we've got one more left on the table.
We do.
It is a tribute to your love of the brand. Here we have a Jaeger-Lecoultre Reverso with a beautiful blue dial and blue strap. I'll let you tell a little bit more about the watch, and then I can highlight my experience when I first saw it. But I have to say, one of the first things off the bat that's so cool about this watch is from the right angle, when I'm looking at it right now, it appears purple in color. And I almost wish it was a purple dial. I would want them to come out with this watch in a purple dial because it would be so awesome and so different. But this watch is blue. You just can't tell from the way that the light's hitting it.
The navy blue strap, which is designed by Kesef Aliano, more on that in a moment, is the same blue as the dial. I'm looking at the watch in my hand. I'm looking at the watch, and I am seeing a blue metallic dial. A blue like a white gold blue dial Rolex Daytona. But when I go back to the dial, in the ambient light, the camera is picking up a sort of eggplant purple. And I can tell you that when I first saw this watch at SIHH 2018, that was exactly what I saw. I saw the purple with my own eyes. It's not just a camera trick. So this is a color-shifting chameleon of a dial with high-grade applique dart-style indices, a lovely traditional small seconds, and in a case that is wonderfully wearable, stainless steel, only 8.9 millimeters thick by 27.4 millimeters wide by 45.4 millimeters end to end, and it features that post-2016 Reverso sunburst motif inside the chassis. As with the original 1931 Reverso, it features a solid steel caseback, suitable for customizing, but back in 1931 the idea was to shield the then truly glass crystal from the blows of polo mallets, and this watch does that, but it also gives you an opportunity to customize with engraving, lacquering, or enamel. JLC will do it in-house for you as well. Now the Kesef Aliano strap, it is designed by the Argentinian
I love that design.
Cordovan specialists. It is lovely, isn't it? And you can see their logo. They did not make this one. They designed it.
And the reason for that is they did come out with a variation of this watch, the original tribute to 1931 that had the Kesef Aliano strap, and it was a huge success. You know, JLC owners and pretty much Reverso owners all wanted that particular strap on their watch, across the board. Jaeger quickly realized that this strap was contemporary, it was youthful, it looked great on the watches, and it gave a classic watch a more modern look and feel. As far as cost and production goes, I have to assume that it didn't make sense for them to have Aliano make and continue making all of these straps for all of the models. So they designed a strap in conjunction with him that had the original overall aesthetic of the first strap, and they're probably going to be making them obviously in different colors and whatnot.
That's true. There was a 100-piece U.S. boutique limited edition in 2012 that featured an actual Kesef Aliano strap. And because the polo boot specialists in Argentina are otherwise occupied making equipment for the monarchies of the world and Hollywood celebrities, they couldn't turn out too many straps. So their design input was given to OEM suppliers for JLC, and this is the result you see right here. The watch does feature a full clasp, which I like. JLC has been cutting costs with pin buckles lately, so that's a nice refinement to see. And at $6,950, the price for this one, to get something from one of the great houses of high horology, I mean, it's less than what you'll pay for a steel Rolex Explorer right now, and I think it's absolutely the best way to go if you want a base metal steel dress watch. If you're looking to buy just one JLC, it's going to be a Memovox or it's going to be a Reverso, just like Omega's your moon watch, Patek is a Calatrava or a Nautilus, the Royal Oak is AP, and that's the way it goes. Great watches.
And I think, when you look at this table, what's so cool is that there's not a single watch on this table that's like the next one. And it really shows you how much there is available in that sub $10,000 price point. When you look at, call it the new watch world at large right now, and you think, okay, there's Rolex, there's Tudor, there's Omega, obviously there's several other brands, but you forget how much pre-owned product gets reclassified into that price point when you can pick them up at a better value.
Absolutely.
So
good job.
My name's Brian.
I'm Tim.
We really appreciate you guys logging on. We know that everybody's at home right now. And Tim, myself, and everybody at Watchbox hopes you're staying safe at home and healthy. And we're going to continue putting out great content for you. And if there's anything that you want to see, anything that you want to discuss, questions that you may have, send it in. Send it to myself. Send it to Tim. We're going to put out some cool shows. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to produce stuff that you guys are going to watch. So again, Brian, Tim, this is Watchbox. See you guys soon.